Do not the histories of all ages relate miraculous presages of strange turns in the world's affairs, foreseen by astrologers, soothsayers, Chaldeans, learned genethliacs, and some that have writ almanacs? Hugh de Brass. The circumstances of the landlady were pleaded to Mannering, first, as an apology for her not appearing to welcome her guest, and for those deficiencies in his entertainment which her attention might have supplied, and then as an excuse for pressing an extra bottle of good wine. I cannot will sleep, said the laird, with the anxious feelings of a father in such a predicament, till I hear she's got an hour with it, and if you, sir, are not very sleepery, and would do me and the dominie the honour to sit up wi' us, I am sure we shall not detain you very late. Lucky Howatson is very expeditious. There was ance a lass that was in that way, she did not live far from hereabouts. Ye need to shake your head and groan, dominie, I am sure the kirk dues were a weel paid, and what can man do mair? It was laid till her ere she had a sark ower her head, and the man that she since wadded does not think her a pin the war for the misfortune. They live, Mr. Mannering, by the shore-sided Annan, and a mair decent, orderly couple, with 6 as fine bairns as ye would wish to see plash in a saltwater dub, and little Cully Godfrey, that's the eldest, the come o' will, as I may say, he's on board an excise yacht. I hae a cousin at the Board of Excise, that's Commissioner Bertram. He got his commissionership in the great contest for the county, that ye must have heard of, for it was appealed to the House of Commons. Now I should have voted there for the Laird of Balruddery, but ye see my father was a Jacobite, and out with Kenmore, so he never took the oaths, and I ken not well how it was, but all that I could do and say, they keep it me off the roll, though my agent, that had a vote upon my estate, ranked as a good vote for auld Sir Thomas Kittlecourt. But, to return to what I was saying, Lucky Howatson is very expeditious, for this lass. Here the desultory and long-winded narrative of the laird was interrupted by the voice of some one ascending the stairs from the kitchen story, and singing at full pitch of voice. The high notes were too shrill for a man, the low seemed too deep for a woman. The words, as far as Mannering could distinguish them, seemed to run thus. Canny moment, lucky fit. Is the lady lighter yet? Be it lad, or be it lass? Sign why cross and same why mass? It's Meg Merrilees, the gypsy, as sure as I am a sinner, said Mr. Bertram. The dominie groaned deeply, uncrossed his legs, drew in the huge splay foot which his former posture had extended, placed it perpendicularly, and stretched the other limb over it instead, puffing out between whiles huge volumes of tobacco smoke. What needs ye groan, dominie? I am sure Meg's sangs do nae ill. Nor good neither, answered Dominie Sampson, in a voice whose untunable harshness corresponded with the awkwardness of his figure. They were the first words which Mannering had heard him speak, and as he had been watching with some curiosity when this eating, drinking, moving, and smoking automaton would perform the part of speaking, he was a good deal diverted with the harsh timbre tones which issued from him. But at this moment the door opened, and Meg Merrilees entered. Her appearance made Mannering start. She was full 6 feet high, wore a man's greatcoat over the rest of her dress, had in her hand a goodly slothorn cudgel, and in all points of equipment, except her petticoats, seemed rather masculine than feminine. Her dark elf-locks shot out like the snakes of the Gorgon between an old-fashioned bonnet called a bongrace, heightening the singular effect of her strong and weather-beaten features, which they partly shadowed, while her eye had a wild roll that indicated something like real or affected insanity. "Aweel, Ellangowan," she said, "wot'd no hae been a bonny thing, and the leddy had been brought to bed, and me at the fair o' Drumsherlock, no kenning, nor dreaming a word about it? What was to hae keep it awa the worry cows, I trow? Aye, and the yelves and gyre carlings frae the bonny bairn, Grace be Wyatt? Aye, or said St. Com's charm for its sake, the dear?" And without waiting an answer she began to sing. Trefoil, vervain, johnswort, dill. Hinders witches of there. Wheel is them, that wheel may. Fast upon St. Andrew's Day. Saint Bride and her brat. Saint Calm and his cat. Saint Michael and his spear. Keep the house frae reef and wear. This charm she sung to a wild tune, in a high and shrill voice, and, cutting 3 capers with such strength and agility as almost to touch the roof of the room, concluded, "And now, laird, will ye no order me a tass o' brandy?" "That you shall have, Meg. Sit down yont there at the door and tell us what news ye have heard at the fair o' Drum Sherlock." "Troth, laird, and there was muckle want o' you, and the like o' you, for there was a win bonny lasses there, for by missile, and dealing to gie them hansels." "Weel, Meg, and how mony gypsies were sent to the Tolbooth?" "Troth, but 3, laird, for there were nae mair in the fair, by missile, as I said before, and I e'en gie them leg bail, for there's nae ease in dealing wi' quarrelsome folk. And there's Dunbog has warned the Red Rotten and John Young of his gruns, black be his cast. He's nae gentleman, nor draps bluid o' gentleman, what grudge twa gangrel puir bodies the shelter o' a waste house, and the thistles by the roadside for a bit cuddy, and the bits o' rotten birk to boil their drap porridge why. Weel, there's ane a buna, but we'll see if the red cock craw not in his bonny barnyard morning before day dawing." "Hush! Meg, hush! Hush! That's not safe talk." "What does she mean?" said Mannering to Samson, in an undertone. "Fire-raising," answered the laconic dominie. "Who, or what is she, in the name of wonder?" "Harlot, thief, witch, and gypsy," answered Samson again. "O troth, laird," continued Meg, during this by talk, "it's but to the like o' you ane can open their heart. Ye see, they say Dunbog is nae mair a gentleman than the blunker that's big at the bonny house down in the Haum. But the like o' you, laird, that's a real gentleman for a sae mony 100 years, and never huns poor folk ef your grund as if they were mad tykes, none o' our folk wad stir your gear if ye had as mony capons as there's leaves on the trysting tree. And now some o' ye maun lay down your watch, and tell me the very minute o' the hour the wean's born, and I'll spay its fortune." "Aye, but, Meg, we shall not want your assistance, for here's a student from Oxford that kens much better than you how to spay its fortune. He does it by the stars." "Certainly, sir," said Mannering, entering into the simple humor of his landlord, "I will calculate his nativity according to the rule of the triplicities, as recommended by Pythagoras, Hippocrates, Diocles, and Avicenna. Or I will begin ab ora questiones, as Halley, Messahala, Ganwahes, and Guido Bonatus have recommended." One of Samson's great recommendations to the favor of Mr. Bertram was, that he never detected the most gross attempt at imposition, so that the laird, whose humble efforts at jocularity were chiefly confined to what were then called bites and bams, since denominated hoaxes and quizzes, had the fairest possible subject of wit in the unsuspecting dominie. It is true, he never laughed, or joined in the laugh which his own simplicity afforded. Nay, it is said, he never laughed but once in his life, and on that memorable occasion his landlady miscarried, partly through surprise at the event itself, and partly from terror at the hideous grimaces which attended this unusual cachinnation. The only effect which the discovery of such impositions produced upon this saturnine personage was, to extort an ejaculation of prodigious, or very facetious, pronounced syllabically, but without moving a muscle of his own countenance. On the present occasion, he turned a gaunt and ghastly stare upon the youthful astrologer, and seemed to doubt if he had rightly understood his answer to his patron. "I am afraid, sir," said Mannering, turning towards him, "you may be one of those unhappy persons who, their dim eyes being unable to penetrate the starry spheres, and to discern therein the decrees of heaven at a distance, have their hearts barred against conviction by prejudice and misprision." "Truly," said Samson, "I opine with Sir Isaac Newton, knight, and while master of his Majesty's Mint, that the pretended science of astrology is altogether vain, frivolous, and unsatisfactory." And here he reposed his oracular jaws. Really, resumed the traveler, I am sorry to see a gentleman of your learning and gravity laboring under such strange blindness and delusion. Will you place the brief, the modern, and, as I may say, the vernacular name of Isaac Newton in opposition to the grave and sonorous authorities of Dariot, Bonatus, Ptolemy, Halley, Esler, Diederich, Nabob, Harford, Zale, Tostetter, Agrippa, Doretus, Maginus, Origen, and Argal? Do not Christians and heathens, and Jews and Gentiles, and poets and philosophers, unite in allowing the starry influences? Communis error, it is a general mistake, answered the inflexible Domine Samson. Not so, replied the young Englishman, it is a general and well-grounded belief. It is the resource of cheaters, knaves, and cozeners, said Samson. Abusus non tollit usum, the abuse of anything doth not abrogate the lawful use thereof. During this discussion Ellangowan was somewhat like a woodcock caught in his own springe. He turned his face alternately from the one spokesman to the other, and began, from the gravity with which Mannering plied his adversary, and the learning which he displayed in the controversy, to give him credit for being half serious. As for Meg, she fixed her bewildered eyes upon the astrologer, overpowered by a jargon more mysterious than her own. Mannering pressed his advantage, and ran over all the hard terms of art which a tenacious memory supplied, and which, from circumstances hereafter to be noticed, had been familiar to him in early youth. Signs and planets, in aspects sextile, quartile, trine, conjoined, or opposite, houses of heaven, with their cusps, hours, and minutes, almuten, almacoden, anabibazon, catabibazon, 1,000 terms of equal sound and significance, poured thick and threefold upon the unshrinking Domine, whose stubborn incredulity bore him out against the pelting of this pitiless storm. At length the joyful annunciation that the lady had presented her husband with a fine boy, and was, of course, as well as could be expected, broke off this intercourse. Mr. Bertram hastened to the lady's apartment, Meg Merrilees descended to the kitchen to secure her share of the groaning malt and the kenno, C-note, and Mannering, after looking at his watch, and noting with great exactness the hour and minute of the birth, requested, with becoming gravity, that the Domine would conduct him to some place where he might have a view of the heavenly bodies. The schoolmaster, without further answer, rose and threw open a door half-sashed with glass, which led to an old-fashioned terrace walk behind the modern house, communicating with the platform on which the ruins of the ancient castle were situated. The wind had arisen, and swept before it the clouds which had formerly obscured the sky. The moon was high, and at the full, and all the lesser satellites of heaven shone forth in cloudless effulgence. The scene which their light presented to Mannering was in the highest degree unexpected and striking. We have observed that in the latter part of his journey our traveler approached the seashore, without being aware how nearly. He now perceived that the ruins of Ellangowan Castle were situated upon a promontory, or projection of rock, which formed one side of a small and placid bay on the seashore. The modern mansion was placed lower, though closely adjoining, and the ground behind it descended to the sea by a small swelling green bank, divided into levels by natural terraces, on which grew some old trees, and terminating upon the white sand. The other side of the bay, opposite to the old castle, was a sloping and varied promontory, covered chiefly with copsewood, which on that favored coast grows almost within watermark. A fisherman's cottage peeped from among the trees. Even at this dead hour of night there were lights moving upon the shore, probably occasioned by the unloading a smuggling lugger from the Isle of Man which was lying in the bay. On the light from the sashed door of the house being observed, a halloo from the vessel of Ware Hawk doused the glim, alarmed those who were on shore, and the lights instantly disappeared. It was 1 hour after midnight, and the prospect around was lovely. The grey old towers of the ruin, partly entire, partly broken, here bearing the rusty weather stains of ages, and there partially mantled with ivy, stretched along the verge of the dark rock which rose on Mannering's right hand. In his front was the quiet bay, whose little waves, crisping and sparkling to the moonbeams, rolled successively along its surface, and dashed with a soft and murmuring ripple against the silvery beach. To the left the woods advanced far into the ocean, waving in the moonlight along ground of an undulating and varied form, and presenting those varieties of light and shade, and that interesting combination of glade and thicket, upon which the eye delights to rest, charmed with what it sees, yet curious to pierce still deeper into the intricacies of the woodland scenery. Above rolled the planets, each, by its own liquid orbit of light, distinguished from the inferior or more distant stars. So strangely can imagination deceive even those by whose volition it has been excited, that Mannering, while gazing upon these brilliant bodies, was half inclined to believe in the influence ascribed to them by superstition over human events. But Mannering was a youthful lover, and might perhaps be influenced by the feelings so exquisitely expressed by a modern poet. For fable is love's world, his home, his birthplace. Delightedly dwells he 'mong fays, and talismans, and spirits, and delightedly believes divinities, being himself divine. The intelligible forms of ancient poets. The fair humanities of old religion. The power, the beauty, and the majesty that had their haunts in dale, or piny mountain, or forest, by slow stream, or pebbly spring, or chasms in watery depths, all these have vanished. They live no longer in the faith of reason. But still the heart doth need a language, still doth the old instinct bring back the old names. And to yon starry world they now are gone. Spirits or gods, that used to share this earth with man as with their friend, and to the lover. Yonder they move, from yonder visible sky. Shoot influence down, and even at this day. 'Tis Jupiter who brings whatever is great, and Venus who brings everything that's fair. Such musings soon gave way to others. Alas, he muttered, my good old tutor, who used to enter so deep into the controversy between Haydn and Chambers on the subject of astrology, he would have looked upon the scene with other eyes, and would have seriously endeavored to discover from the respective positions of these luminaries their probable effects on the destiny of the newborn infant, as if the courses or emanations of the stars superseded, or at least were coordinate with, divine providence. Well, rest be with him. He instilled into me enough of knowledge for erecting a scheme of nativity, and therefore will I presently go about it. So saying, and having noted the position of the principal planetary bodies, Guy Mannering returned to the house. The laird met him in the parlor, and, acquainting him with great glee that the boy was a fine healthy little fellow, seemed rather disposed to press further conviviality. He admitted, however, Mannering's plea of weariness, and, conducting him to his sleeping apartment, left him to repose for the evening.